What's up, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of my Let's Play here in the Infinia realm, hosted by Grayson. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the Nether Hub that I finally finished building. And I'll be talking a little bit about structure blocks. I learned a lot about them while I was building this, and they can be a really great tool once you kind of figure out how they work and how you can use them. In this realm, we haven't actually been able to go to the Nether just yet. Grayson wanted to wait until he built a Nether dungeon to host an event that will open up the Nether for everyone. To enter the Nether dungeon and start your adventure, you will need to find a Nether key and throw it in the front entrance. Doing so will place some text and open up the door. And once you're inside, stepping on the pressure plate will display some more flavor text, as well as lock the door behind you so that you cannot escape. We also have deny blocks underneath this entire dungeon, so you can't place or destroy any blocks. So you're just going to have to run around, in this super dangerous place full of spawners and enemies, and just try to survive while making your way to the very top. And as of recording this video, the dungeon is not yet complete. Grayson has a few more things that he would like to change, as well as create a boss room where I will need to write some commands to figure out exactly how the bosses will work. But to be honest, I've been a little slow making this video. In fact, in the realm, this dungeon is finally complete. Players have even gone through and accomplished it. So, keep an eye out for the next episode where I will be going over more about this dungeon and showing how it exactly works and progresses. But really quick, I will give a small preview of how exactly this front entrance works. The item key door is just a simple item sorter that only accepts the key, and then that will trigger a structure block which will make the door go away. Then we also have a few command blocks in here that are just for flavor text. But all in all, it is super duper simple and really cool. But we'll save all the details of that for another video. For now, let's just take a look at the Nether Hub that I have finally finished. So this is going to be the Nether Hub for all the players. These portals will go to main spawn, and then all of the players will branch off their own hallways off of the main highways, going off in each direction. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about structure blocks during this episode because I learned a lot about them in assisting me with building this. Now also, you may notice that the sky is blue. For some reason, one of the mods has turned the nether sky into blue instead of the red that it's supposed to be, and it's also gotten rid of the fog. So things will look a little bit different than they should. When I first started, the backgrounds looked like the way they're supposed to in the Nether. It was all red and kind of foggy, but it is what it is. I kept dragging my feet for this video because I was hoping that it would go away and revert back to the way it was, but apparently one of the mods that we have just changed that, and so I'm just out of luck. But let's jump into the structure block information. So for these hallways, for nether highways, they tend to be very repetitive and very long. And if you want any sort of detail on your highways, it's going to be kind of a pain to build it, because you're going to need to build these, 100, 200 block long hallways just for players to branch off of. So I used a structure block to copy small sections of the highway and then paste them. And then I used the fill command to change some of the details. So if you place down a structure block and then tweak the size and the offset to select the part that you want to copy, you can then just copy and paste it over and over to save you a ton of time. So the way that I like to do this is I like to be as precise as I can. Select exactly what I want to copy and try not to select any more. I also leave the structure block visible until the very, very end, but I try not to copy the structure block because I don't want to just create new structure blocks as I copy and paste this thing. Mainly, it's just nice to have a visual reference of where exactly the front is, so that I'm 100% sure that I'm copying the right sections. And on Bedrock, structure blocks can copy up to 64 blocks in the X and Z directions. So they can copy a big square that's 64 by 64. Now for the Y value, it's unlimited. You can select from the bottom of the map all the way to the top of the map, so you can actually get a really big selection when it comes to these structure blocks. And when it comes to copying something that has a pattern, you want to make sure that the pattern lines up whenever you copy and paste it. So for this example, we have these pillar sections on the inside. So if we have a pillar at the front, we want to make sure that the back part of the selection stops right before a pillar. That way when we copy the front to the back, it copies that pillar exactly where it's supposed to be, so it should continue the pattern. And once you finish selecting the section that you're going to copy and paste, all we need to do is type in a structure name and then click save. Just remember that save to memory is temporary and will get cleared whenever you log out, where save to disk is permanent. But for stuff like extending hallways, save to memory is totally fine. You don't need that selection later on, so you can just save it to memory and let it be cleared out of your cache whenever you log out. Now, when we're ready to paste the selection to extend our build, we're going to need to place a structure block down at where we're going to place it. And so for this specific design, just remember to try to match up the patterns. So we have a pillar at the very, very beginning of the structure. So we're going to place this structure block aligned with a pillar just so that we know that there is a pillar right there. I like to use my load structure block as an anchor point so that I can visually see exactly where I need my selection to go. So we're going to switch it to load mode, type in our structure name, and that will bring up the selection box that is the same size as your structure. And then we just need to tweak the offset so that it's exactly where we want to copy it. And don't worry too much if you get it wrong. There were several times that I had the offsets incorrect, especially with the floor value. I would get confused and place it one block too high or one block too low. But if you do notice a discrepancy, you can just re-click on the load structure block and then just change the offsets and repaste it, and it will overwrite all of the mistakes that you made. But once we click load, some of the stuff may be a little wrong, just depending on how your pattern is, but for the most part, it should line up perfectly. As long as it does, then you're set, and the more you do this, the better you get at it. Now, for this specific one, I kind of messed up. We have two different internal patterns. I did the bottom section where it's repetitive, like one doorway, one pillar, one doorway, one pillar, but these top circular sections are a little offset. I did the pattern originally where there's one pillar in between two of the circles, and then there's two pillars in between the next sets of circles. So it's like one pillar, one circle, two pillars, one circle. But when I copied it, I accidentally, forgot, and I copied it to where two sections have one pillar in between. So now this top pattern is going to be a little bit off, but since it's so minor, I can go in and do it by hand. But if I really wanted to change it, all I would have to do is replace the structure block in a slightly different location, move it back by one pattern section, and then repaste it. And it would overwrite all of the things that I just did, and so then it would be correct. So just, don't freak out if you get your patterns wrong, or if something doesn't line up. Just remember that you can always use another structure block to overwrite everything that you just did. Another thing that I use the structure blocks to help me with is I have these stairways that go down to the bottom of the map, just in case someone wants to go explore the nether or just go netherite mining or something like that. I wanted to build staircases down to the bottom. So we're going to try to use structure blocks to copy and paste them to each corner of this room so that I only have to build these pillars and the doorway, one time. And then I'm going to try to use the structure blocks to copy and paste the staircase all the way down, so I don't have to build this really long diagonal staircase that's just repetitive. I'm just doing this to try to save some time. So, of course, we're going to try to line up our selection as best as we can, but since we're going to copy this into other areas, we want to have some anchor points. We want to know exactly where the selection needs to be, and we're going to use the structure block as a visual guide, in the selection, so that we know exactly where we need the corner of the selection to be. And we're also going to save the section that we're going to overwrite, just in case I mess up. That way I can just reload it really quick and overwrite any sort of mess up that I did, especially since we're going to be rotating this selection. When it comes to hallways, you basically just, recopy and paste them, extending out, and you don't have to worry about figuring out which direction they're rotating. But with something like this, we need to be a little bit more precise, especially because we're rotating it, and, it's not as simple as a hallway. So I'm going to go ahead and build some of this bottom section, just to give me more of a visual reference of where my selection box needs to be. The selection on this side that I'm copying and pasting, is lined up perfectly with this bottom floor section. It's on the very, very corner. So I'm going to pillar up right here and place my selection box on top of this pillar, or I'm going to place my structure block on top of this pillar. That way I have a visual reference not only of the bottom section, but also of the structure block itself. Because over here we have the structure block in the corner of the selection, so I'm going to place the structure block in the exact same place so that whenever I load this selection box, now I can just line it up with the structure block in the top corner. The more visual references that you give yourself, the easier it will be to make sure that you line these up perfectly. And again, like we talked about on the hallway, even if you get it a little wrong, you can always just overwrite it with another structure block, which is why I saved the part that I'm overwriting beforehand. So if I get it really, really wrong and I just have no idea what I'm doing, I can go ahead and activate that bottom structure block just to reload the way it was or the way it is right now. But to be totally honest, I usually don't give myself a backup. I usually just kind of roll with the punches even if I get it wrong. But for this one, I was really nervous. Also for the rotating, it rotates clockwise. So rotation 90 degrees is one rotation clockwise. But we want this to rotate one direction counterclockwise, so we need the rotation to be 270 degrees. And it looks like it works. Everything looks like it's lined up. So that's super duper cool. Now we just need to do this thing on the other two sections, and I'm not even going to make a backup this time. I feel comfortable and safe doing it, so I'm just going to try to place a structure block exactly where I place the structure blocks on the other side, so that we know that this structure block needs to be in the topmost corner of the selection box. Again, I really like using the structure blocks as an anchor point. If you just use the build itself as anchor points, sometimes it gets confusing, of like where exactly this selection is supposed to be, but if you use the structure block and make sure that it's in the exact same place as where you saved it or loaded it before, you can use it as an anchor point. So in this case, that structure block needs to be in this topmost corner like you see here, and when I click load, it should just work. Since our structure block is in the exact same place, that means our selection box should be in the same place. But you can always use the visual guides just to look around and see. You can always just exit out of the structure block and look at the visual guides. They are super duper handy for double checking things so that you don't mess something up. And for this corner, we need it to rotate one turn to the right, so we need it to rotate 90 degrees to the right. And now when we press load, we'll just cross our fingers and hope everything matches up. And it looks like it does. Like nothing really changed except that it deleted most of the background, so it looks like it's a success. Now that we got most of the entryways to the staircases done, it's time to extend the staircases down to Bedrock. I'm a lot less nervous about these staircases than I was the entryways. Since the entryways were part of that center room, I really didn't want it to mess up. But I will show you here in a minute, if you do mess up, how easy it is to fix. So for these stairways, I'm going to place a structure block on top of the stairs, and then select a large section of the stair for me to copy. So for this selection, I'm going to make it, as big as I can, but I'm going to try to only select the staircases. I don't want any of the netherrack stuff. I don't want any of the other parts of the build. I just want the staircases, because I don't want these weird little remnants, hanging around. So what I'm actually going to do is, now that I've selected most of the staircase, I'm going to go in and delete as much of this netherrack as I can. I'm going to try to clear out this entire square so that I only have a staircase selected. Of course, I could always break out all of this netherrack by hand, but I'm actually going to use the fill command to try to save some time. Now, you may or may not know, but when you're entering coordinates into a command or into your text box, on a PC, you can press tab to autofill the coordinates that you're staring at. I'm not sure what the hotkey is on a controller, but if you have a mini keyboard, it should be tab. So if you press tab while staring at a block, it will start to fill in the coordinates of the block that you're staring at. So I'm just going to go around and delete all of this netherrack so that I only select the staircase. Now the fill command, since it always fills in a giant square or a giant rectangle, it's not really ideal for tight spaces, because if I just kind of went crazy with it, I might end up deleting part of my staircase. And we wouldn't want that, so I will have to delete some of this by hand, but I really, really appreciate the guides. Having the visual guides of where the selection is really, really helps in times like this. When you're trying to make sure that there's nothing else in that selection, you can actually see what it's selecting. So that's really, really helpful. For times like this when you're trying to only select the build and not select all of the extra stuff. But now that we got it selected, it should be pretty empty. I don't really care about that glass down there. I can fix that later. For now, I'm just going to save this the way it is, and we're going to try to paste it at the bottom of the staircase. Now, I do have to pay attention to the internal pattern of the stairs. I alternated black stone pillars with deep slate pillars, so I'm going to have to be careful and make sure that my structure block is at the same level as a black pillar. Because at the very, very top of my selection, the very first block is on a black pillar. So I need to make sure you know, that my structure block, when pasting into other sections, is also on a black pillar, you know, because we don't want the pattern to get messed up, you know, which I actually did a few times and had to go back and fix it. And that's another reason I like using the structure block as a guide, you know, placing it to where it's going to be in the corner of a selection. You know, that way I know exactly where the black pillar is and where exactly this selection needs to be, so that whenever I go to paste it, like so, it all matches up all perfectly. You know, that is super duper cool. Now we just need to do this on all the sides, and then I can make a new selection of a staircase without that glass at the bottom, you know, and then carry that all the way down. And of course, you could always use structure blocks to copy organic builds, like this scary worm right here. But I will mention that if you copy organic things and paste them all over the place, you can usually really tell that they're copies. You know, they really stand out, that it's like, oh, this is exactly the same as the other thing, even though it's organic. But when it comes to symmetrical things, you know, you can use this to copy sections of it, rather than the entire thing. You know, like for this hallway or these staircases, we're not duplicating the entire staircase somewhere, so you can't even really tell that I duplicated it at all. You know, since we're using it to just copy sections to make it larger, you know, it just makes the build look bigger without actually making it look like it's copied. Now I know this video is more on the informative side and not very entertaining, but I really hope you're enjoying it or finding it interesting. If you like this video, or if you like shiny Endermen, type "We love shiny Endermen" in the comments below. But let's get back to our structure blocks. You know, one of the last things I'll talk about when it comes to structure blocks is, you know, some of the other stuff that you can do with it. So like this shiny Enderman, if you don't want to include it in your selection, you can just turn off the include entities. So now whenever you name it and go to save it, it will not copy that shiny Enderman. You can actually use the include entities option on a structure block to create custom mobs in Bedrock. You know, you may or may not know, but you can't summon custom mobs using text commands, but you can copy them using a structure block, and then you can summon them using that structure block later on, you know, just by loading them in. But, you know, some of the other things that structure blocks can do is the animation stuff down at the bottom. Now, you actually saw this at the beginning of the video at the Nether dungeon. You can use it with redstone to make things look like they're moving or being built. Now, you also have mirror and rotation, which just changes the orientation of your copy or your paste, but the integrity is like a percentage of the blocks that will be pasted. So if we type in 90, that's like 90% of the blocks will be pasted, you know, and 10% will be left out. So it makes things look more random or more ruined, and the seed is a specific version of that integrity. And if you would like me to make an in-depth guide for structure blocks explaining all of the different features, you know, just talk to me about it in the comments, and I will do my best to get it done. You know, any requests that you have, I would be more than happy to help. You know, that's why I make these videos, is just to try to help people out. You know, try to provide as much information as I can. You know, but now let's take a look at what happens if you get it wrong. Like, I entered the wrong rotation on this stairway, and so now it's all messed up, and it's the end of the world, and oh my god, it's so horrible. But it's really not. You know, if I just replace a structure block where I originally had it and go in here and load it correctly where it's not rotated in the wrong direction, it will just fix itself. You know, it'll delete all of the mistakes that I just made. So all we need to do is make sure that the selection box is selecting the correct location as always. You know, and this time we even have a visual guide with a staircase going the wrong direction. But before I click load, let me actually show you a really cool thing when it comes to data blocks. You know, so if you hold down Control and then pick block while aiming at the structure block, it will copy the data of that structure block. That means that anything that's written in the structure block will be copied into the new one. You know, so the mode, the offset, the rotation, you know, all of that stuff will magically be in the new structure block that is added to your inventory. And you can use this with chests, you can use this with shulker boxes, any sort of container or command blocks or structure blocks, you know, anything that has data, you can hold down Control plus pick block to copy that data. You know, so if you have a chest with 64 diamonds and you copy that chest using Control pick block, whenever you place that chest, again, it will have 64 diamonds in it. You know, or, you know, for this structure block, it makes it really easy to continually do something. You know, rather than having to type in the offset over and over and over and type in which structure you're loading over and over and over, you know, you can just copy it, and that way you don't have to actually change anything. So especially for something like this staircase, you know, I can just copy one of the original ones and then just go in, place it, press load, then move down, place it, press load, you know, rather than having to go in and type in the offset and type in the name. You know, it really is helpful and it saves a whole bunch of time. But pick block I don't think is assigned by default, but I would definitely recommend assigning a button to pick block. Even if you're never going to use structure blocks or any of that stuff, pick block is super duper helpful even in survival. But we have run into a bit of a problem. We have a ton of lava that is just going everywhere and is covering my staircase. And so I'm going to attempt to use the fill command, not to just clear the lava, but to turn the lava into something that doesn't flow. So we're going to use the fill command, again pressing tab to auto-fill in our coordinates, and we're going to type in netherrack, then replace lava. This should replace all of the lava in that selection box with netherrack. Oh, it worked. Okay, so this is really helpful, mainly for times like this, but you can also use the replace modifier for the fill command to make things unique. Like, I didn't mention it earlier, but that's how I actually made the hallways different colors. I would type in, the selection of the hallway, and then I would type in, like, green concrete replace red concrete, and that would turn all of the red concrete into green concrete. Or in this case, we're typing in netherrack replace lava, and it's turning all of the lava into netherrack, which then can be, it's easier to clean it up. But even though it is making it easier, it's still super awkward trying to get rid of this lava lake. There's just so much lava, because now even if I get rid of the netherrack, the lava's just going to flow anyway. So I'm going to try to make the selection box like as big as I can, and just, try to get rid of as much lava as I can, and then figure out the next step from there. So if you didn't know, with the fill command, there is like a block limit, so you can't make your selection like super duper huge. But then there's also another limit, and that is simulation distance. So like default, simulation distance is 4 chunks in every direction from the player, and so you won't be able to fill blocks that are outside of that region. So not only do you have the limiter of how many blocks you can fill, but it's also a limiter of how far away those blocks can be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the selection box that I just made to replace the lava, and I'm going to make it slightly smaller by decreasing all of the coordinates, and now I'm going to try to turn that netherrack back into air, and hopefully I'll be left with like a netherrack wall in between the air and the lava. Oh, I forgot the Y value. Here, let's make the Y value a little smaller. Let's go ahead and turn all this lava back into netherrack, and now pull up my selection again, and we're going to change the Y value to be a little shorter, and replace all of the netherrack with air, and it worked. Okay, so we now have a netherrack wall that kind of blocks in the lava. So I can deal with this. There's only a couple lava poking through. This will work, I do believe. It's also kind of funny seeing all the ore floating around. Since I'm just replacing like netherrack and lava, I'm basically just left with some ore. I got some little crabs helping me out too. But also now I need to fix the bedrock that I broke. I kind of flattened out some of the bedrock, and I want to make it look normal again. So I'm going to fill in some of the bottom layers back with bedrock so that it's flat again, and then all I have to do is try to kind of mimic what bedrock looks like. It would also help if I made the selection boxes the correct size, so we need to go up by 1 more block on the bedrock. But then once I do that, I'm going to kind of speckled some bedrock here and there, and as long as people don't dig it out, they won't really notice that it's not super correct, but if I speckled it out and then now fill in all of this air with netherrack, hopefully it'll just look like, it's supposed to. And I'm not super worried about it, I just kind of would like to make it look a little uniform so it doesn't look like that I went around just carrying out bedrock and making stuff all crazy, especially since it's like a selection square. It might look a little awkward if there's no bedrock within a giant square. And it would also help if I would type in the right coordinates. I keep going up or down by an extra block, and I don't want this, so I need to replace all of this netherrack on the very top layer with air and see what I'm left with. Hopefully it will just look like it's supposed to. So I just need to type in air replace netherrack to replace this whole top layer of netherrack with air. And whenever I'm done, hopefully it will just look, pretty normal. Cool, it works out. Alright, so now we got our staircases done, we have them all the way down to bedrock. Now I want to connect them with some tunnels, just so that it's easier to not get lost. Rather than it just being a staircase down to bedrock, I want to connect all 4 staircases together with like a tunnel. So this area is mainly for people to bed mine, or go crazy, whatever they want to do, looking for ore and stuff like that. One thing about traditional nether hubs that I never really like is that it's usually hard to get down to bedrock. Rarely do people actually build a way for the players to get down here, and so you have to make your own tunnels just to get down to bed mine. And that gets a little confusing trying to find a tunnel, just to get some magma or blackstone or some ore. But now all that's left is to do the ceiling. So I made this little section with some glass fog. You know, I've been really playing with glass fog in this design. I even made a little video talking about, you know, how glass fog works if you want to check that out. But I'm a little nervous about this section, you know, because it's kind of complex and I don't really have like a grounding point. I'm just trying to leave my structure block in the middle rather than having it be in the corner. And I'm a little nervous. You know, hopefully this will all work out and I won't put it in the wrong place. But I'm going to try to copy this over on this side and rotate it 90 degrees. You know, again, I really like to use my structure block as a corner reference point in the selection so that the structure block itself is in the very corner of one of the corners on the selection box. It really, really helps make sure that everything's in the right place. You know, but this time I'm not doing that. You know, my structure block is just going to be kind of in the middle of the selection, so I'm going to have to use the build itself as the reference point, you know, or like the skeleton that I already have, and just try to hope that I can figure out where it's supposed to go. I am at least going to leave my structure block in the same place as the other structure blocks, mainly so that the numbers kind of end up matching. So like with this first one, the offsets are at -19, and that means that I'll probably have 19 as an offset for some of the other offsets on the other selections. You know, so it at least gives me like a reference point to start guessing from. But really, that's all this is going to be is an educated guess. You know, I just have to kind of keep guessing until it looks like I'm in the kind of the right place. And you know, I'm struggling. I'm having a really hard time trying to figure out where this selection box is supposed to go. So I'm just going to try to type in, aha, okay, so it looks like, you know, your offsets, if your structure block is in the same place, you know, they're basically either going to be double or half of your previous offsets, you know, so, you know, I mean, 9 isn't exactly half of 19, you know, but it's half of 18, so like, it looks like the numbers kind of match up as long as your structure blocks are in the same place for each selection. You know, again, it's still a little awkward, so I'm going to just kind of count blocks in my previous selection and just kind of hope that I'm in the right place. It looks like I'm in the right place, but we won't know until we click load. And good, okay, it doesn't look like anything really moved, and it looks like everything lined up. All right, this is super cool. We got it worked out. Okay, now I just have to do this 2 more times. You know, hopefully, you know, it'll go smoother now that I figured out the first one. You know, so it looks like our main offset numbers are going to be like 9 and 19. You know, so let's see if that makes it a little easier for me to figure out what my offset is supposed to be. It would also probably help if I wasn't using a preloaded structure block that has the staircase that I was copying earlier. You know, but that's alright. We can just delete the Y offset and it will all become normal again. And so, okay, we're back with the structure block in the corner, which I really wish that I'd have kind of lined it up that way. It would be much, much easier to figure this out, you know, but I didn't. So we're going to just try to figure it out. So let's start typing in, you know, our 19 number and see how close this is. It looks like it selected the center section. So let's try 9. And see, since our last one ended up, hey, okay, so there you go. So see, you know, the offsets tend to match up as long as your structure block is in the same place. This looks like it's in the correct place. So we're going to rotate it a full 180 degrees, click load, and cross our fingers. It looks like it worked out, and it did. Everything looks like it lined up. That is super duper cool. That makes me super excited. Now we just have to do this one more time, and we'll basically be done with the ceiling. I think I'll fill in the middle part just by hand. You know, it's small enough that I don't really need a structure block to help me out. But look how good this looks. That is so cool. You know, and I didn't have to place the 100 layers of glass in each corner. I just had to do it once and then copy it with a structure block. So if you're a creative builder, I would highly recommend start practicing using structure blocks because it can really help you save time. You know, granted, it will take you quite a while to get good at them, but just remember that they are a tool that you can use, you know, and the more that you use a tool, the faster and better and more proficient you become with using that tool. You know, when I first started using structure blocks, it was, you know, really hard to wrap my mind around them. It took me a long time to really figure out how to use them. Even with this project, I struggled a little bit along the way, you know, but for my next project, I'll be even better. But for this Nether Hub design, I wanted you to have a way to actually get out of the hub and directly into the Nether from the hub itself. So I built these staircases to these little bridges that lead you out into the Nether. And then also those staircases leading down to Bedrock. So no matter where in the Nether you want to go, you can get there from the hub. You don't have to worry about making your own secret hallways or any of that stuff. But I also really liked how these monsters turned out. In the glass fog underneath, I'm really happy with those. But aside from the aesthetics of the hub, I really tried to make this functional. We have a way to get down to Bedrock, a way to get out into the Nether, then we have our highways for people to branch their portals off of, and the highways have soul soil underneath them so that you can use soul speed to quickly get from point A to point B, and then everything is spawn proofed. I used either glass or buttons or carpet just to make sure that we don't have any gas or any magma cubes or any of the obnoxious, Nether monsters. I am kind of sad that one of the mods made the sky like overworld sky. I really wish it still had that red nether fog. I think it looked better that way. But it is what it is. We can't really change that without figuring out which mod it is and then disabling the mod. That is kind of one problem with mods, is that they are subject to change, and you as the player don't really get to control what they change. So maybe you like part of it, and then maybe at some point it like destroys your world. Or, something minor, just like changing the aesthetics of something. But either way, I really like how this Nether Hub turned out. Let me know in the comments what you think about it and what you would do differently, or what you would like to see me do in the future. If you have another idea for the Nether Hub, just let me know. Grayson has been diligently working on his mushroom. This is the main spawn area for the whole world, and it looks fantastic. He has this really nice galaxy theme going on with some mushroom people and then some holiday stuff. I recorded this actually before Christmas, so he had built some Christmassy type things, and I believe for the holiday stuff he actually tears them down and then builds different holiday stuff, for each holiday, which honestly makes me really sad. Like I always hate when people tear down really cool builds. It does keep things nice and refreshing, but there's just a part of me that wishes that we could keep everything that we ever build, and just build new stuff in new areas. But especially for main areas, it's nice to update them and keep them nice and interesting. If you finish an area and then never go back and change it, it's always cool for new people to see it, or for yourself to go back and look and see what all you did and where you were. It's fairly nostalgic, which is honestly what I prefer, but if you do go and change things occasionally, it adds a whole nother layer. It adds like the layer of time, like the village or the build is like constantly evolving, just depending on what else is going on in reality. But we do have a little mailbox area here, and then he built a library type room with a floating book and lots of bookshelves, and it's all turning out really cool. He is doing a fantastic job. But that's all we got for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting. I know it wasn't the most entertaining per se, but I tried to be informative, so if you ever want to use structure blocks or the fill commands, you can kind of see how, someone like me actually uses them when I'm working on a project. Let me know what you would like to see in the future, or let me know if you have any questions and I will do my best to answer them or to help you out. I always take requests or try to help people the best that I can. But don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment. Comments are super duper important for these YouTube videos, so let me know what you would like to see in the future, what you did or didn't like, or if you don't know what to say, just tell me hi. I would really appreciate hearing from you. But since that's all we got for this video, until next time, I've been your host, OmLedu, hopefully teaching you a build trick or two, and reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.